So go back to Tom for just a minute. Back to kind of one of the first questions I asked Scott, so I wanted to ask you this one too. So you came into a company with a lot of history, way before you showed up. And I really want to kind of get your perspective of what your vision was when you took over as, what, fifth owner or something? I mean, they're employees, which is a different model. So maybe talk a little bit about that, and then talk about what you intended to do with the company. And we'll don't really hit on culture as much now, but we'll talk about culture here in a few minutes, but talk about kind of that idea of your vision for the company.
Well, my first opportunity at Swingle was to, I had been working with Barefoot Grass Lawn Service in town. Great company, absolutely outstanding model from a lawn care services standpoint for somebody who wanted to sort of be entrepreneurial and run their own situation. You were a territory manager, you had your own territory, you built it up, you sold, you grew it, you got to know your customers. I did that for about 2 or 3 seasons, looked at a franchise opportunity in other markets with them, and we had a partnership with Swingle at the time. Swingle was doing the bulk of the tree work for Barefoot at the time, and so I had a good relationship, understood what was going on there. You know, Swingle had what I came from, which I came from the Midwest. You know, legacy type relationships, core values, all those type of things is what it presented to me, and so I was really excited about that. I was given the opportunity to grow the lawn department, and that was it. The lawn department was a little blip at the time. Everything was focused on tree care. We came to where we're probably number 2, number 3 in lawn care market share today in the marketplace is where we grew it. So I saw the opportunity to move into that business. There was a tremendous amount of science involved. There was a tremendous amount of high service. All the foundational things were there. Probably the one thing that wasn't there was, ironically enough, there wasn't even a budgeting system. You know, so we go back now to 1984, 86, and there wasn't really much budgeting going on. There wasn't a business plan. And so I was real big on plans, still am today. You don't get to do the things you want to do if you don't have a plan with executable moments, measurable time frames, and those type of things. And so by bringing budgets in, bringing the knowledge I had gained from Barefoot Grass, I was an outsider to a great extent to the Swingle world. And there were certainly a lot of people who wanted me to fail because I was shaking things up a little bit. You know, some of you have probably been in a production environment, and I remember it at Barefoot, you know, $500 a day was a daily goal. Well, I came in there and I was doing $800 a day, and I was still leaving in 6 hours. Well, what did the old guard tell you? Quit working so hard. You're going to screw this thing up, you know? And we had some of that when I first came to Swingle, and so we drove a lot of changing in production standards, raised a lot of things that way, and I saw a pathway and had a belief that I could influence the company and help it grow and take it to another level from a business standpoint, and that's really sort of what I tried to do, and I was given that opportunity through Dave Dixon to be able to do that. I was there at the right time. I mean, I think timing and luck influenced a lot of our success oftentimes, and Chuck Morgan was retiring, Dave was looking for somebody. He had already chosen some heir parents, and I sort of had to politically work my way through with those heir parents to demonstrate that I had the same things in mind that they had in mind in trying to grow the company. And then I think ultimately one of the things is many of you in the roles you find out, or those who are, you know, right-hand people to the owners find out, is that lots of people don't want to do the job you do. They say they do, but when it comes down to it, they don't want that responsibility of making sure that people have insurance to cover their families. They don't want to make sure that sales are there on the table. They might say that, but there's a lot of people who will let you do what you want to do, and if you stay committed to it and you demonstrate results, you know, they'll follow along and support you. So I think that's sort of what helped for me, Dean, is that, one, we were successful, we were committed, you know. There was lots of 16-hour days, and people think about that and go, really? And I go, yeah, you know, 6 at night till 9 at night. or 6 in the morning till 9 at night, you know, you make a lot of sacrifices, as you all know. Are they the right sacrifices or not the right sacrifices? Everybody has to make that own independent decision. But I work my tail off for many, many days, you know, to be able to sit here today and say I take 90 days a year off in the field. I sacrificed a heck of a lot to get there. And so you set that plan, you set that course, you know, you hire the right people, you trust them. I think that's what helps you get there.
Yeah, so that goes back to the visioning piece, right? So, Rich, let me ask you a question. Where do you want your business to be 5 years from now?
5 years from now.
5 years from now, what's it look like? I mean, is it different than today? And by the way, there's lots of ways to do this. I mean, some of you have built a business, maybe you only do X number of dollars a year, $1 million, $2 million, whatever, but you make plenty of money, and life is good. You don't necessarily want to make a $20 million business like Tom did, but maybe you don't. So there's no right or wrong answer necessarily here. The question is, do you know, right? That's the question. So I'm curious, have you thought through that to some degree?
I have thought through that. 5 years from now, I see the business still being a mountain-related business. We've been doing work in the Vail Valley, a little bit over in Breckenridge, Summit County, and some over in Aspen where I started it too. I can see expanding that a little bit more and trying to play a little bit more in the retail sections in each of those. But also I see a different ownership model that will start to come about in probably 2 to 3 years where I'm not a majority stockholder potentially, and I become a working partner but take on other capital partners. To allow for the growth.
Okay. And Scott, kind of change gears just a little bit. So, I mean, a lot of folks here said pretty much the same thing. You're running a mower, you're in the field. The challenge is, how do I get out of that? How am I able to do all the things I need to do to make that transition? How do you know, number one, when it's time to do that? And then what are the steps you have to take to make that happen? You know, there's different places, kind of as you stair step. How do you know when you're at one of those places? How do you recognize it? And then what do you do to go to the next level?
To know when to go to the next level is an intuitive approach, I think. I've worked hard at putting the right team in place so that I have the opportunity to more pick and choose the clients that I choose, that I want to make sure that I give the right service to. We're primarily a referral-based company, and I have the good fortune of having a client base that is well enough off that can afford the kind of product that I serve. And there are certain clients that I want to maintain that kind of relationship with because I feel that they're going to sustain me in leaner times. And that's what's been my ability to maintain the stability in a down market for the few previous years. For me to know exactly when to take those next steps, I think, like Tom was saying, it's a little bit of luck. Sometimes it comes into play. We recently had a transition organizationally that has forced me to make some organizational changes. And it says, okay, if I'm going to do this, well, I don't take it as a step backwards. I see it opens a huge door for me to move forward. And so that's what we're doing right now and doing strategic planning over these winter months. It has allowed my lead designer to really take on a new, more vibrant role organization for me. My operations manager is now taking on different roles and responsibilities that have been more directly associated with my general manager's position. It allows everybody organizationally to come up the ladder where those opportunities might not have been otherwise.
Okay. So John, one of the things he mentioned was this idea of change isn't necessarily a bad thing. And we're gonna talk a little bit about culture. I know Tom and I have had conversations about this. You can't undervalue culture in your business. And this is maybe kind of the first leading edge of that. So talk a little bit about kind of what he was mentioning here, which is kind of understanding that change is not all bad, and how do you work your people through that? Because when you grow a business, is everything going to stay the same? Well, absolutely not. Is everybody's role going to stay the same? Certainly not. Does everybody make the cut? Not likely. So you've got a lot of things that happen as you grow a business. So how do you deal with that change management idea?
Change. We brought in a consultant 2005, and they basically flipped us upside down. We were getting too big. We were getting unwieldy. Things were getting sloppy. We were losing a little bit of our service. The first thing the consultant told me was, "You're going to lose some people during this change, and these will be people that you didn't think you could live without." And it took, I'd say it took a year to set the groundwork. And in that year, we lost 4 key people. And he was right. We didn't think, 2 years prior, they were holding everything together, so we thought. So change can be scary. It can be difficult. Outside eyes can affect your business and your change more than anything. We've worked with several different consultants over the last 10 years. Very good, all good results. Some better than others.
So a question for the room, how many of you use outside consultants? Maybe a third? So Tom, talk a little bit more about perspective of folks outside of business.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing and a bad thing. Certainly, I we did an exercise where, I think it's great that you get to the consulting situation. It clearly an opportunity exists for all of us. You're here because you like sharing. You're here because you find information from other people. And, how much do I spend on a consultant depending on the size of my business, right? That's the next question that you ask if you start to go down that pathway. But, I remember one of the first, we're also active members in what is now called Vistage, and used to be called TAC, the Executive Committee. YPO is very similar to that. I can tell you that being an active member in Vistage has probably accounted for, on average, 25% of our growth over the last 10-year period, from a revenue and people standpoint and development standpoint, so I would continue to encourage that. You're not going to agree with every consultant who comes in the door, and in some cases, not agreeing is right. I think you have to give yourself that permission to go, this person just isn't identifying with myself, my culture, my company, my market, my community, my team of employees. And it was great. Thanks, you're here. Be professional and get them to the airport as quick as possible. And I have a great story of, Dave Dixon kicking a guy out of the office going, "Get that to the airport," and we cut the meeting off in half. We still use some of the things we learned, but the person just wasn't the right person. So I think if you go down that pathway, you have to recognize that. I think you said you use how many over how many years now? Several, and not all of them are going to be perfect, but they're probably going to give you something and have an impact on your business. And some of them may come back and bring things back later on. And so we've got a good relationship that way with consultants from that standpoint. From that standpoint. So.
Yeah. So maybe one of the values, once you're in your business, all you see is your business. So if nothing else, maybe sometimes you get a perspective from outside, but you're just missing it, right? Could be right there. But to your point, they're not all, everything they say is not what you do.
No. And I think the other consultant we all have to remember, and we're victims of it ourselves, is, oftentimes your best consultant is who? It's your team of people, right? It's your front line. It's the people who, in my case, it's the people who are probably most connected to our customers. And so often, we forget to ask that team of people. In today's environment, at our size, we do an annual employee survey. It's an online situation. It's extremely inexpensive to do it. It's totally anonymous.